If the rumors are anything to go off of, then we are very close to the release of Samsung's next flagship foldable device. And with this in mind, there will be those out there who are looking forward to that release, but also who are looking at Samsung's current flagship foldable, the Z Fold 4. Now, based on the rumors I've heard and seen, the Fold 5, or whatever they choose to call it, isn't set to bring many major differences when compared to the Fold 4, so I thought it would be a great idea to talk about whether the Fold 4 is still worth it in 2023 by going over 6 key points to consider. Now, these are points that I have gone over in my long-term review and other videos. However, this video serves as an update to that and will be used to express how things have held up. So the first aspect we need to talk about is the price. For a lot of people, this is the one factor that turns them off to even thinking about owning a foldable. So the original starting price for the Fold 4 came in at $1,799.99 for 256 gigs, $1,919 for the 512 gigabyte, and then went all the way up to $2,159 for the 1 terabyte. Now, these prices are the same as what you'd see if you buy it directly from Samsung, but if you don't mind venturing out to other sellers like Amazon or even eBay, you can get this device for almost near the price of the S23 Ultra or even lower than that. It all depends on whether you're partial to getting a device brand new or if you don't mind a refurbished or renewed device. You can see here that Amazon currently has a 25% discount on a brand new unlocked Fold 4, which brings the 256 gigabyte down to $1,349. The 512 gigabyte version on Amazon has a 23% discount applied to it, bringing it down to $1,469. If you do find that those prices are still too high for your liking, then consider going for the Amazon Renewed condition, which will give you an even deeper discount, as you can see from these 3 listings. Personally, I've purchased products from Amazon in like new condition and have never had an issue, but I can understand that some people might be skeptical about this. To those who are, I'll tell you the 4 things I tell anybody purchasing an electronic device. Purchase a protection plan, record a video of yourself opening the packaging it comes in and yourself taking it out of the box and turning it on. Make sure you know the return policy and utilize it if you need to. And the 4th thing is to stress test the heck out of that device to check for any potential problems. These are the 4 steps I follow, and I haven't had any problems since I started doing this. I'm not saying that you'll be completely set by doing all of these things, but it comes down to the probability, and the more thorough you are, the more you CYA. If you want some even steeper than steep discounts on the Fold 4, a good place to look is on eBay. You'll definitely want to make sure to look at the condition and the model number, but nonetheless, you can get this device for a pretty good price, in my opinion. Oh, and for sure, let me stress this once again, make sure that you are going to buy the US model, because if you do buy a dual SIM model or anything along those lines, Samsung will not support your warranty since those devices are typically made for another country. Now, the US unlocked version I have, the model number for that one is SM-F936U1. So make sure you go for that. Now, as you've heard me say over and over again in various videos about the Fold 4, the Fold 4's design is something that people usually hate or love. Now, I kind of feel like I fall somewhere in between, but that's also because I've come to understand the design of the Fold in such a way that it makes me just see how convenient it is for a foldable device. You definitely have other foldables out there that have bigger cover screens and even bigger inner displays, but what I appreciate about the choices Samsung made is just how subtly convenient they are. For instance, the cover display is still something I find convenient to use for menial tasks like reading through an email I don't intend to respond to, scanning my RSS feeds to see if there's anything interesting to look at. Heck, I've even become fond of using it for web browsing and do this about 80% of the time. The point is that the cover screen, even with its weird aspect ratio and 6.2-inch size, is just a screen that has all the basic non-intricate tasks covered, and that's why I don't necessarily have much of a problem with it. In saying this doesn't mean that I have no issues with this display at all. Sure, it could definitely be a tad wider and have S Pen functionality, but other than these two gripes, I find this display to be not as bad as it's actually made out to be. Besides, the whole thing with the Fold is that you do have that huge inner display on the inside, and even with its flaws, this is still a display you can do and see much more on than your average candy bar phone. Back to the examples I talked about before, if I feel like there is an email I want to respond to, I can simply unfold the device, which gives me much more space to type out longer responses to said email. If I happen to find something that catches my eye within my RSS feed, I can use the inner display to read through all of this text here, and if there's an embedded video, then the inner display gives me enough space to view that also. If I'm doing that web browsing that I do 80% of the time on the cover screen, then the other 20% is handled by the inner display, but only when I feel it's necessary to actually see the content spread out over a larger horizontal width. Now let's go ahead and call out the elephant in the room. Yes, there is a crease that exists in the middle of this display, and the fact of the matter is that it is something that won't go unnoticed, but as with any new smartphone design and the human adaptation process, you get used to the design quirks because the experience of using a device that gives you the freedom to choose the way you consume content becomes an integral part of how you use that device on a day-to-day basis. If you are one of those individuals that is led to purchase a smartphone because of its camera, then let me be the one to tell you that the Fold 4 doesn't have the best cameras, or rather the most versatile cameras out there. That honor goes to devices like the S22 Ultra and S23 Ultra. What the Fold 4 does have is a camera setup that's similar to devices like the S22 and S22 Plus, S23 and S23 Plus. If you are familiar with the camera set of those phones, then you won't have an issue with the Fold 4's camera setup at all. I've mentioned this in one of my videos, but I'll say it again here. After using the Fold 4's cameras, I started to think to myself that the 4-camera setup on the Ultra devices wasn't necessary for the majority of the photos and videos I take, and I'd like to think that would be the same for most people out there. Now, having 10 times zoom is no doubt a great feature to have, but the vast majority of the pictures we take are close-ups anyways, and if I find myself needing more than the 3 times optical zoom offered by the Fold 4, I still have the digital zoom options up to 30, and what I'm taking a picture of within these digital zoom ranges just needs to be distinguishable to some extent, and that's personally for me. Now, I've also confessed before that the reason I used to purchase the Ultra and actually the Note devices was because of their cameras. However, after owning my first foldable device, which was the Fold 3, I started to ask myself this question about the Note and the Ultra series. If this device didn't have the camera setup it has, would it be worth it for me? Obviously, I asked the same question about the Fold and ended up saying, yes, it would be worth it because I use my phone primarily for productivity and content consumption, and the Fold gives me 2 different ways to actually do that with the cover screen and the inner display. Of course, taking photos and videos plays a big part in how I use my device, but the photos the Fold 4 produces aren't anywhere near bad. Now, don't get me wrong, if Samsung continued to use the same camera setup for the next 3 years, I'd start looking at them sideways, and I do feel that this camera system will need to have some significant upgrades at some point, but for now, usability, productivity, and content consumption are what this device does best, and if you can forgo not having the utmost versatile camera out there like you would get on the Ultra devices, then the Fold 4 is a great option to look at. It's been said somewhere that the Fold series was supposed to be the evolution of the Note series. Of course, the Note series was known best for the S Pen that came with it, and the Z Fold 4 can use a version of the S Pen specifically made for it. Now, this isn't the full-on S Pen experience since you don't get air actions. It doesn't slide into the bottom of the device like it would in the Note or S22 Ultra or S23 Ultra, but what it lacks in features and storability, it makes up for with the ability to use this S Pen on the largest canvas you'll get on a Samsung phone. I've always loved the S Pen, but thought that it was limited by the design of candy bar phones, especially given the fact that you are writing from left to right, which is what we normally do, or right to left, whoever can do that. That's pretty amazing if you can. And you are not getting enough horizontal space when you are using a candy bar phone and holding it in the normal way. With the Fold 4, you get a gratuitous amount of space to write your notes horizontally or even vertically if you want to, and this makes up for the lack of features I mentioned before and really does double down on the digital writing experience. The size of the S Pen here also allows for a much bigger grip when compared to the traditional S Pen you get with devices that can store it within those devices. Battery is one area that this phone falls short in, but to be fair, that is going to be most Samsung devices before the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, which we can safely assume is what will be in the Fold 5. If we're going off of rumors alone that the Fold 5 won't have much that will be different, then just like with the S23 Plus and the S23 Ultra, the one and only thing I can find to be surely worth it with the Fold 5 is the battery life gains we will most likely get from the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 within that device. To be completely transparent about the Fold 4's battery life, you can definitely get around 6 to 8 hours of use, but it really comes down to exactly what you're using and other factors like brightness, a rogue app that's taking too much resources, etc., pretty much. If you are someone who isn't able to have access to a portable battery, a car charger, or just a regular wall charger, then you might find some difficulties getting through the day, especially with heavy usage of this device. I have personally learned how to get around this and have made changes within the software to give me about 7 hours and some minutes, but I'd be lying to you if I said that I didn't wish this device had better battery life. Now, again, it isn't horrible, it's just you really have to see what you would use this phone for, and I can say if it's anything that's graphically intensive, then you'll for sure have some battery life issues. Anything else will most likely be workable, but that comes down to, again, what you intend to use this device for. We've already seen a few software updates for the Fold 4, but nothing too major, at least in my opinion. That being said, however, if software updates are something you're worried about, then you'll have at least 2.5 more years of them, as Samsung has promised 4 years of updates for certain flagship devices, with the Fold 4 being one of them, of course. Even after that support is finished, this could be a device you can still get some use out of, since the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 inside still performs pretty well, and by pretty well, I mean it can definitely handle mostly anything you can throw at it with minimal slowdown, or rarely, very rarely any slowdown. One very useful software feature with the Fold for me is Flex Mode. And this is something I've actually made a video on, since I do find myself using it more and more out of the sheer convenience that it provides. If Flex Mode does sound at least a little interesting to you and you'd like to learn more about Flex Mode and what it does, please go ahead and watch this video, which I'll post the link up to in the right corner of this video, in the description of this video, and at the end of this video. In a nutshell though, a basic explanation is that it allows you to bend your phone to a certain degree, which then splits the content among the bottom half of the display and the top half of the display. So those are the 6 reasons I would say to at least look into the Fold 4 as your next device, and why it might be worth it for you in 2023. Now, I hope I've been fair in at least talking about, the nuances and kind of the downsides to all of the things I've talked about here. If there's anything I need to clarify, of course, I am willing to do so, but the only and the biggest reason that I made this video was because of the price you can get the Fold 4 at now. You know, that entry-level price for a premium foldable device is something that you pay out of pocket for when that device releases. As time goes on, you know, it gets cheaper. So I think it's worth taking a look at as your next phone. But with that being said, wherever you are in the world, have a great day, a great afternoon, a great evening, or a great night, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.